Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Volume by Volume podcast. I'm Di.
And I'm her daughter.
And in this series, we plan on sharing our thoughts on the manga series Assassination Classroom by Yusei Matsui. This series is published by Viz and rated older teen. We are currently reading through this series with the Monochrome Manga Club. The Monochrome Manga Club is an in-real-life manga club that we host at a local Barnes & Noble, where we are currently doing a read-through of this series, so we thought it would be nice to share our thoughts with you as we read through the series. As such, this podcast will have spoilers, so if you do not want to be spoiled for the series or have not read through the series up through the volumes listed in each episode, we suggest that you skip listening to this podcast until you have, or if you're interested in my non-spoilery thoughts, you can check out my Desis 19 diaries, which I will link down in the description box below. So basically my thought for this podcast is that my daughter and I will sit down after the Monochrome Manga Club meeting for the month, and we'll share our thoughts on the volumes for this series, and we are going to do this for the entirety of the series. Basically, it's going to be just our casual thoughts, chatting to each other about what we thought about the volumes. We probably won't get too analytical, and so if that's the type of content that you're looking for, you're not going to find that with these episodes. That being said, if you are interested in sharing your thoughts with us about these volumes, I do hope that these episodes will serve as a way for you to read along with us and share your thoughts, especially if you find that you don't have anyone to chat about these volumes with in your real life. I will say that this series is not new material for us, so we are going to try our hardest not to include spoilers past volume 2, but we have both watched most of the anime. I read through volumes 1 and 2 back in 2016, but I never continued reading with the series.
I have read the entirety of the series since 2016.
So with that being said, we hope you enjoy hearing our thoughts on these volumes. So since this is the beginning of this series, I'm going to go ahead and read a synopsis. So in case you don't know what Assassination Classroom is about, it'll give you a little bit of an idea to see if this might be something that you would also be interested in reading. Tucked in the mountains near the elite Kunugigaoka Middle School lies a small derelict building that houses the delinquents and dropouts of Class 3E. Looked down upon by their peers, the students in this class appear to have little hope in advancing their academic careers. That is, until the national government tasks them with eliminating the greatest threat to their planet, their new teacher. Having already destroyed the moon, the octopus-like professor, dubbed Koro-sensei, has now threatened to destroy the Earth by March of the following year. In light of their mission, the students have found that killing him is easier said than done. Not only can Koro-sensei move at speeds of up to Mach 20, but he can also resist almost every earthly weapon. Ironically, he also proves to be one of the best teachers Class 3E has ever had. Training the class to excel in both their studies as students and skills as assassins, Koro-sensei is confident that his students' ingenuity and indomitable will could return them to the main campus. Through trial and error, the students of Class 3E must figure out Koro-sensei's weaknesses, and fast, for the very fate of the world depends on it. So, like I said, we did read through these 2 volumes with the Monochrome Manga Club, and so what did you think of the series, daughter?
It was a very nice return to a series that I loved when I first encountered it. There's just something about this series that has that specific charm, and I'm not sure if it's the comedy that is inputted into the series or the characters that just makes it so fond in my memory. So reading through it again was, I guess, what you would just call a good time for me.
Did you remember a lot of what happened in these volumes from either your previous read-through or watching the anime?
Yes, I pretty much remembered everything that we covered in these 2 volumes. Although if I could say something in regards to the anime, because we had used the anime as our first form of contact for this series, I felt like this moved very fast.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I also remembered everything that happened in these 2 volumes, but I think, and I'm pretty sure I said this at our Monochrome Manga Club meeting as well. I think when we had watched the anime, that was our first touch with this content. It feels like it's longer because it takes a longer amount of time to get all of that animation that's on the page through an episode. And so when I was reading through these volumes, I'm like, wait, doesn't that happen later? It feels like it's too soon for this to have happened. But again, when I read this was back in 2016, we probably were almost at the point where we stopped watching the anime at that time. So it's been quite a while. And considering the amount of time that it's been since we've touched this series, I'm very surprised at how much I have retained from my initial experience with this series.
And it's not like these manga chapters are short. They have a lot of content and time, I guess, within each chapter. So it's not like just like the span of, like maybe one class period. Some of them may have like depictions of things within the class period, but some of them just expand through the entire school day or school days, plural. So just that fast progression of time, I guess, feels more realistic in the paper rather than on screen.
Right. Like with the introduction of their foreign language teacher, Miss Jelovich. I'm not sure if it's pronounced Jelovich or Yelovich, but I don't recall her being introduced so early when we were watching the anime. But, with the amount of time that passes before she gets there, it does seem like it moved pretty quickly from the time that we're introduced to Koro Sensei and the class in the very first page to when she joins as one of their new teachers.
It's a similar effect with the introduction of Karma, too, because he had some time in the anime away from the series. And they're like, oh, he is like this nice, imposing figure to look forward to. And he just came like, fast gust of wind within the manga. It's just like, oh, it's that time already?
But not only fast gust of wind, he immediately starts, trying to kill Koro Sensei. And, he's pretty consistent about it. I mean, throughout these 2 volumes, we see the students attempt to kill Koro Sensei. And none of them are really as consistent with their attempts as Karma is when he jumps into the scene.
I wonder if Karma's introduction into the story was to help encourage the students to, amp up their assassination attempts because of his skill. He demonstrates a high proficiency of combat towards Koro Sensei that can't be seen within the other characters. The other characters may try within their skill sets, but Karma is the best one so far.
I think also, too, Karma is definitely one that has, I would say, tendencies towards that type of behavior, whereas most of Class 3E are there because they have problems getting good grades. It's not that they have behavioral issues, and not that Karma really has behavioral issues, but he definitely has more than I would say the rest of the students that we were introduced to have. Like the baseball player, Sugino.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like, just your average guy, enjoys sports, but has problems getting his grades up. We had the girl who was doing the chemistry and trying to poison Koro Sensei. And, she's obviously got some talents and brains, because you can see that within her, but I don't think that you see that she's got any kind of tendencies in that fashion either. I mean, she's basically just trying, like you said, within her skill set to take out Koro Sensei, which is what they've been tasked to do. Something interesting that I thought about while I was reading these 2 volumes was the fact that, we've got some impressionable kids in this situation, right? And they are being asked to assassinate their teacher. And as I said before, it doesn't seem like most of them have those types of aggressive, murderous tendencies. So in a real life kind of scenario, you would think that by the end of this series, if they are able to complete their task, some of them may have issues with the things that they were asked to do over these few months, even though it's only a few months. When you're regularly doing something, especially something that's not something you would normally do, it could leave an impression on you. Now, I doubt that we're going to see any of that, because this is like a fantastical world, and it's kind of got a comedic feel to it, even with the gravity of the situation. But it's just something that I thought about, because it's not something that I thought about when I had touched this series the first time. But when I was reading through this time, it's definitely a question that had crossed my mind. Like, is this experience going to change or be detrimental to how these students go on with their lives, provided they're able to complete their task?
Now, I can't really say too much since, I have had contact with the entire series. But I think that while what you have said is a very valid concern within the real world, I feel like a lot of the tendencies here would be projected internally more towards the school system. Because a lot of, the students' frustrations are centered towards the fact that they are kind of like, they've hit rock bottom within their middle school. And their school system has basically wronged them to the point where, there's no way that they could, redeem themselves to go back to such a prestigious campus. And, they haven't been given, their right to fair and proper education. And I feel like you could see that within their midterm testing. The way that they had tackled their so-called enemies of, their tests, like their skill sets would be centered towards that, because that is a more frustrating situation rather than trying to assassinate Koro Sensei, Because Koro Sensei might have destroyed the moon, but he hasn't done anything to harm the students. He has cared for them. He has put their needs as a top priority rather than the school, who has discarded them.
Well, and we also see that within these 2 volumes. There's a scene in there where they're talking about how he's coming up with their tests, and he's individualizing each test for each student to help with the things that they need help with, to assess, how they're coming along with the things that they actually need help with, as opposed to giving a general test to the entire class that may or may not play to certain students' strengths and weaknesses. So he definitely cares about them. I mean, he even offered to help one of the students create a poison, like help her like correct her thought process or help her with her figuring out the formula. But you also see the kind of naivete of the students because she thought that he helped her create a poison that would actually kill him. And I'm sorry, why would he do that? I mean, he obviously helped you with something, but you can see how disappointed she was that he didn't like give her the answer. And that's not really his like thing. He helps you get to an answer, but he will never give the answer. Like even with Sugino, when he was throwing that ball, you know, he told him why his attempt failed. And so he's always kind of giving little helpful tips and tricks. You know, he's got his little quirks. Also, like heading out to Hawaii and getting, what was it, a tropical drink or something? You know, and he tends to like go do that on lunch breaks, go to here, there, and everywhere to get snacks or whatever. But at the same time, I feel like just within these 2 volumes, you can see how much he cares for these students, even though his end goal is to destroy the world.
I feel like with Koro Sensei's actions, he's also trying to demonstrate the fact that there are still good teachers out there. It's just that the ones that these students have been dished out have been terrible. They don't really care. They're trying to save face.
And they don't even put in the work.
Right.
I will say that I'm a little bit surprised that at the beginning of the series, we don't really get a lot of information on Koro Sensei. Like, we get what he can and cannot do. We get, you know, what, like, certain substances will do to his body. But we don't really, like, get a lot. Like, is he an alien? Is he a lab experiment? Like, they don't give us like that. Why did he destroy the moon? I found that to be very surprising that we don't get those details. And I guess it's not really important in the main gist of beginning this series, but it just feels like, you know, there's stuff that we need to know, like, why is he on this mission to destroy the Earth? Is he just a, you know, homicidal octopus? And if that's the case, why is he taking all of this time and care with these kids? Because he genuinely seems like a caring teacher, at least to the kids. We don't see him interact with anybody outside of the kids in these volumes. We see him interact with the adults. What's his name?
Karasuma?
Yeah, Karasuma and Miss Yelovich. It's very hard for me not to say what they gave her nickname. The nickname that they gave her. But yeah, I think, you know, also with the introduction of, I'll just say Irina, because that's much easier. That, you know, she brushed off what the kids told her when she got to the school. She's like all like, I know what I'm doing. I'm the best at my job, you know, all this big head energy. But, you know, once she realizes that all the things that these kids have learned about their attempts to take out Koro Sensei prior to when she got there is actually stuff she should have taken seriously when they told her, you know, that whole like light turn on in the head. I'll be interested to see like what happens with her as this series goes on, because she's she's definitely had like a change just in these 2 volumes with how she is interacting with the students and how she thinks about what she needs to do going forward with helping to take out Koro Sensei.
These 2 volumes definitely gave a nice introduction to, who's going to basically be the main cast, main focus of the story. So that means the potential for character growth is there.
For sure. I mean, we basically didn't spend a lot of time with the kids, I would say. And the kids that we did spend time with was only through their individual attempts to kill Koro Sensei. So I definitely think that as the series goes on, we're going to get, more of the class, I would say. We can't, I think, spend all of our time with certain characters in this series, but there's got to be other kids in that class that we spend time with, because the class looked pretty large. I didn't count how many students there were in the class, but it looked like a pretty large class.
A pretty standard class of around 30 or so. And with the time spent, we'll be able to see what sort of strengths these students have, because they all can't have the same strength. They will all have different interests that will benefit their own skill set. So having at least that little bit of time with each character, we'll get to see how they shine against their peers, I guess I'll say.
I don't think I have any other thoughts on these volumes. I mean, I enjoyed both of the volumes. It was really nice to revisit these characters. It was a nice experience to remember that most everything that I read in these volumes I remembered happening from the anime. And yeah, it was just a really, really nice experience.
I think that there isn't too much that can be said because these are the opening volumes of the series. But I do think that, considering we both have positive responses to a revisit of the series, that we will, continue to enjoy this revisit and possibly come across things that we didn't see the first time.
So I think that pretty much wraps up our thoughts on these 2 volumes. So let us know down in the comments below if you have read these volumes and what you thought of them. But please no spoilers or discussion past the things that happened in volume 2. We will be back again next month with our thoughts on volumes 3 and 4. As of right now, our plan is to just record these episodes on the series that we are reading with the Monochrome Manga Club. That being said, there may be opportunities for me to read other series, and maybe I'll record some of these episodes on other series that I am reading through. And these episodes will be on series that we are consistently reading through completion. So it won't be like we'll read a volume from one series and then not touch that series for months. We would only be recording these episodes on series that we are continuously reading, which is why I said for now we are doing the Monochrome Manga Club series reads. We are planning on starting a new series read for the Monochrome Manga Club in March. And so we may have another series that we start doing these episodes on as well. But as of right now, we are just reading through Assassination Classroom. And yeah, we will be back in February with our thoughts on volumes 3 and 4. So yeah, share with us your thoughts on these 2 volumes. This one is available on the Shonen Jump app if you have a subscription, just so that you know. And until next time, we hope that you will continue to join us as we read through Assassination Classroom, volume by volume. Bye.